The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Greetings, prisoners, and welcome to Board with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage for games we play on your table and on your television. You can think of us as the pinky and the brain of gaming podcasts. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network and a member of the Make Us Better team over on Patreon. I am one of your hosts, Kyle, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the only guy I would want to take over the world with. Josh, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing swell. How are you, Kyle?
I'm tired.
Yes.
I'm the one who's tired this week. This is like the busiest week of work for me during the entire year. So I've talked about before, I work in higher ed and classes start next week. So I have been home for 17 minutes after working a 12-hour day today, and that will be basically the entire week this week. But it's okay. I love my job. I love what I do. But I'm really excited to be here. I'm feeling a little under the weather, though, which is kind of a bummer. So listeners, I apologize if there's any coughs or sniffles. I will try to mute appropriately, but sometimes that happens. Josh, are you a fan of Animaniacs?
Yes, and I found out yesterday what probably people have known for a while, but I didn't know that it's coming back in 2020.
It is. That is true.
On Hulu, 2 seasons.
Are you
very excited?
So you're looking forward to that?
I loved that show as a kid. One of the things, like my guilty pleasures, is watching YouTube now, because that's like kind of, I have to like live my life in like 15-minute videos if I watch TV. Mm-hmm. I watch the Fine Brothers channel all the time, so they always do the React episodes, and they did kids react to Animaniacs yesterday. So it was really interesting watching. I think it's anyone under teen, so 12 years old and under, reacting to, and how many of them already knew what it was.
That means their parents are raising them right.
Right. So I thought it was great, and they showed like some of the like subplots from the show, stuff I had completely forgotten about, like the chicken that is wearing human clothes all the time, and people don't know it's a chicken.
Yeah.
So I want to rewatch it. I think it's on Hulu now.
Yeah, I believe so.
So I kind of want to get back into it. But yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I watched a lot of Animaniacs when it was first on, and it's interesting because I've seen it on Hulu multiple times, and for some reason, the idea of sitting down just to rewatch a show like Animaniacs on Hulu just doesn't cross my brain as something to do.
Right.
Like when I sit down to watch TV, I think of like, I want to watch this thing that has this long through story or whatever. And the idea of watching a cartoon that I used to watch as a kid, even though it probably would bring me a lot of joy, is just not something I ever really consider.
Are you not the type of person to have things on like in the background while you're doing things?
Usually if I have something on in the background, I'm either listening to music, listening to a podcast, or I have put on a movie that I know very well. So it's a movie that I have seen many, many times that is going on in the background. Otherwise, I get way too distracted if I have other stuff going on. Even if it's maybe a television show or a movie I've seen a couple times, I get very sucked into whatever's happening there, and I stop doing whatever I was supposed to be getting done.
Yeah, I get you. I thought he silenced his phone.
It's okay. You're just so popular that
it just Flux the Pose tweet. They're busy recording while we're recording.
Oh, Flux the Pose. Those folks are great over there. We should have a crossover episode sometime.
I don't think they like us, but we should.
Well, hey, we like them, and that's all that matters. We can't control other people, John.
That's true.
Hey, this has been a really longer than usual intro. This isn't a television and childhood memories and talking about Flux the Pose podcast. This is a gaming podcast. So thanks for joining us so much this week. As always, if you have any feedback, questions, suggested topics, hit us up at Board with VG on Twitter and over on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/boardwithvg. So we'll definitely take a 5-star rating over there. Long form communications could find us at boardwithvg@gmail.com. And I always use that hashtag board with VG on all the social media so that we can see all the games you're playing and be part of those gaming conversations you're having. And if you're interested in helping make us better, check out patreon.com/makeusbetter. And a big thanks to all the supporters over there. Even if it's only $1 or $2 a month, it really helps us be more successful and really helps push us forward in all of the things that we're doing. So big thanks to all of you who contribute. Enough of the housekeeping stuff. Josh, what have you been playing on your tabletop?
So before I talk about what I have been playing, I want to talk about something. So we've probably previously talked about like gamer inclusion in board games and being open-minded and, you know, not be such like a harsh hobby like some people can make it.
Right.
So that directly ties into our first Twitter poll for board games to play. So obviously I haven't played Wasteland Express Delivery Service. And it was something that I felt like I needed to do because I said, we're going to do the survey. We're going to play a game that people pick. I wasn't, and my wife said she's up for the list, but I wasn't keeping my wife's enjoyment in mind. I was really making it a task instead of something fun to do. So if Wasteland Express was like a 35 to 40 minute game, that's one thing. Like maybe I can like try to coax her into playing a game she has no interest in. But Wasteland Express is 90 to 120 minutes. Can you imagine someone basically making you play something that you didn't want to and try to be engaged in it for that long of a time?
I mean,
I can't.
Josh, aren't we supposed to make sacrifices for those that we love?
Yes, we certainly are, which is why I was able to play what I played this weekend.
I'm kidding. No, I absolutely agree with you. That can be very challenging to ask someone who might not be into a game to be like, hey, we have precious free time that we get to spend together. I want to spend it doing something you're not going to like doing.
Yes. So there'll be games now that I will actively try to play with friends who are into heavier games. And so Wasteland Express will be the first game I play when we have free time to play not Gloomhaven with a group. So we decided we'll still pull 4. And if I think a game is too heavy for her or something she's not interested in, we'll sidebar it and I'll keep it separate. So we took out Risk Europe because I don't feel like that's a game that will excel with just 2 players or that people will want to hear about with 2 players. So that was out. So we did a new poll. We will play Bob Ross, The Art of Chill this week. So we'll be able to talk about it next week. And as soon as we play it, I'll put out another poll. So we'll keep going. And anything that didn't get picked goes back in the hat. I did sneak Megaland in the house and I put it in the hat. So we'll see what happens when that comes up. So that being said, trying to be a better gamer husband for someone who came right into this hobby with me and for me. So I want to make sure I keep fostering her interest.
Absolutely.
So we played Gloomhaven. That was my big, and like to play Gloomhaven and have a kid, that's where she lets me go do things every once in a while. So we continued our campaign. It was our first time going back to town. So we bought some new gear. We found out we were playing the gear a little bit loosely in our first couple games where we had one more item than we were supposed to have. They do limit what you can carry. We did an event, which they give you like A and B scenarios if you do a town event, which is optional. And usually they say that results are more favorable than road events. So we did the town event and it was like saving this little girl from this horrible thing. And we completely, we saved her and it's like gain 2 renown or whatever, something that will increase your party reputation. And we're all excited because that doesn't happen very often. And it was like, if you have this person in your group, and we did not have that person in our group. So basically what we did was nullified. They were just like, you save her, but she's still screaming bloody murder and she goes on her way. You're like, oh, great. So that was fruitless. And then we entered an Inox encampment. That was our choice. We could either go to a crypt or the Inox encampment. We chose Inox over a crypt. And it was intense. We, again, if anyone remembers the last time we played, came down to our very last turn to beat it. So it gets exciting, I guess, but it's also very stressful. We had to defeat 15 Inox guards. Or 15 total kills. We had to get 15 total kills in 12 turns. Very challenging. Lots of characters moving, us not moving as much. What's funny, this is a game for the long haul, so we want to enjoy what we're playing. So we kind of made a couple house rules, like there's a treasure chest in this dungeon or encampment.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the way at the other end of the board. You'd literally have to sprint through all the bad guys, hope you didn't get killed, and then try to open this door. So we decided if we successfully complete a campaign that we'll take the treasure.
Right.
Obviously, that's not how the game was designed, and I'm sure people will scoff at that, but we're just not at the level that I think a lot of people who play games at this level are at.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having fun with it, so that's what we're going to keep doing. But it's challenging. It really is, and I think that's what makes the game so good, because you're always feeling challenged. So that's what I like about it. I mean, if we lost, I might be speaking differently about how I feel about the game, but overall, I think we're having a lot of fun, and it does take away our days of playing other games.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never really had a game besides like Pandemic Legacy where we try to sit down on specific days and play out a campaign. So
right.
I'm just happy we have it, and I'm happy I took that blind dive into Kickstarter just based off of word of mouth, not knowing anyone who had played it. So yeah, very happy to have it. Glad to see it in my FLGS. It's not selling at $150, but it's nice to see it's making its way around to stores for other people to enjoy.
Yeah, I think it is actually somewhat in stock sometimes, every once in a while now, which was way different than it was not that long ago.
Yeah, exactly. So that was it. Not a lot to talk about. I was going to try to play. I sat down with Bob Ross Rules last night, and I thought that game was going to be like a walk in the park to learn, and it's pretty in depth.
Oh, really? I assumed it was it's called The Art of Chill. I thought it had to be very chill to learn, at least.
You get chill points.
Gotcha.
It seems pretty competitive, but it seems like it'll be interesting. So I'm looking forward to talking about that next week. And I know what you've been playing. I'm excited. But before you start talking, I do want to say, I think we talked about it on the PSVG podcast, if anyone listened. I was talking about how my Target's shelves are pretty much a catastrophe, like what Toys R Us looked like its last 3 months of business. But going back into my Target last week, I was pleasantly surprised to see total rehaul of the board game area, lots of space, because what they finally did was moved all the clearance stuff down to sporting goods. So all the board games that were on clearance are all down there. So it's nice, organized. They had Nyctophobia. They had Megaland. They had Villainous. They had a bunch of new games that they're carrying. So I was very happy to see that. But enough of that. Kyle, what did you play?
So really quick before I cover mine,
yes.
I have decided I'm going to try to ask this question every time you talk about Gloomhaven. So Gloomhaven still currently ranked number 1 overall on Board Game Geek. Does Gloomhaven deserve to be the number 1 ranked game?
I think it does. I don't think it's number 1 for me. But the fact that it can bring me into, the fact that this game can bring me into this side of the hobby, I think speaks to why it's rated so highly. So I would say it still deserves to be number 1.
Gotcha. Excellent. All right. So, as Josh alluded to, I finally joined the club, and if you listened to PSVG last week, you found out I got my copy of Villainous. I also joined the club, and I got my copy of Megaland as well, but I have not had a chance to play that yet. But I did jump into Villainous and had a chance to play it. I'm not going to necessarily talk too much about how the gameplay works because Josh has covered that really in depth. But what I do want to talk about and have maybe a conversation with you a little bit, Josh, about how impressed I am with this game. Because, you know, I only had a chance to play one game in a 2-player format. And then the rest of the time, what I did is I did some fish bowling. And I don't know if you did this a lot, if you ever played a lot of CCGs, but when I played a lot of Magic, when I would build decks, I would fish bowl. So I would give my opponent an imaginary 20 life, or if I was trying to build a mill deck or a combo deck, an imaginary whatever that I was trying to get rid of. And I was someone who, because I played a lot of very aggro decks, I played a lot of, you know, back in the day when I was playing a lot, like during Zendikar and stuff, I played like Boros Bushwhacker and a lot of these very fast, aggressive decks, red deck wins, things like that. I wanted my games to either win or lost. In the 60 minutes we had to play 3 games, I wanted to be able to go get a soda and a candy bar and have 40 minutes to relax. Like, I was the person who was like, I wanted to turn my dude sideways and hit people. So I would fishbowl and I would take it down and I would build these decks and I would want to be able to get my opponent down to 20 life to 0 in 4 turns at the maximum. Because obviously, since I'm fishbowling, there's no blockers, there's no anything else. So I wanted to be able to do 20 points of damage in 4 turns. So after playing Villainous, I said, you know what? I really wonder like what some of these other decks play like. Like, how am I going to be able to understand how these decks feel and what they're like? And granted, when you're playing against people, it's going to be a little bit different. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start playing. I'm just going to put the stuff down. I'm going to start playing. And I went through all the decks at least one time.
Oh.
Just going through, seeing kind of how they played, like what decisions would I make, not knowing obviously anything else about the player interaction, which there is some, but just getting a feel for it. And I am amazed at how balanced these decks are. Now, I think there are some decks that are still maybe a little stronger, and I shouldn't say stronger, a little more straightforward to learn than other decks. But I think with the right frame of mind and frame of reference and how you approach working the deck, I feel like all of them are very viable in most matchups. Now, I think probably if you went like a couple like 1v1 decks might not work super great against each other, and I couldn't put that together for me off the top of my head. But I think overall, if you're playing a 3-player or a 4-player game, like I think that these decks overall seem to interact really well. It seems pretty balanced. It seems that some might favor those with a little more experience versus those that might favor people who are just newer to the game. But I'm really impressed by what they did with this.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Do you have just thoughts on, because I'm assuming you haven't played it anymore.
No, and it's I'm dying to play it more. I really want to introduce my folks to it also. First of all, fish bowling has a totally different connotation here, so I'll leave.
Well, it has a very specific connotation at least in Magic it did. Maybe.
Yeah,
so.
We have a different meaning for fish bowling here.
I don't know if I want to know.
Well, yeah. Well, it's okay. It's people listening know. I agree with you. Only from the 2 decks we have experience with. It could have gone either way because we could have both picked heavier decks. But so Ashley, my wife, had Maleficent, and I had Jafar. So like what you were saying, like hers was very straightforward. Place curses down. Boom. That's all you got to do. Place 4 curses, be somewhere. Mine was like, get this item, bring it to here, use it here to open this, take that, bring that guy to your side, get back to here. So it was probably the same amount of difficulty to do on either side, but it made it really feel so much more unique and difficult. But I feel like you're talking about balance. I really didn't feel like when we talked, I said to her, oh my God, yours is going to be so easy to do. But because if I play right and I utilized her fate deck is built to stop her from winning. And my fate deck is built to stop me from winning.
Right.
So Jafar's, you have to hypnotize the genie. Well, there's only one genie in my entire fate deck.
Right.
and you have to get the magic lamp, and there's only one magic lamp in my whole draw deck.
Mm-hmm.
So hers, she had to place curses. She had like 25 curse cards in her deck. So, but every card I drew from her fate deck is like, get rid of a curse card, make it harder to play a curse card. So I really like the balance as well. But like you went to another level with to find out that the balance felt like that way for every deck.
And I think the thing that's interesting is like on the surface, Jafar definitely seems like a very challenging deck because it's counterintuitive to a lot of the things you generally think of. Like there are times where you're like, you know what? I'm just going to dump my whole hand and I'm going to draw an entire new hand. Like, and I think that's counterintuitive for people. People don't think they don't want to give up resources. They don't want to give up things, or like this thing is good in my hand. I don't want to get rid of it. And one concept I bring with me all the time is that anytime I'm playing a game that has decks of cards and lots of cards in it, I look at my hand and I don't say, do I have what I have good? I say, is what I have the best I can possibly have? And if the answer is no, then it's gone. I'm always wanting the best, not what's good, what is the best. And it makes it much easier to get rid of and dump cards and discard cards that you're like, well, that's good, but that card isn't going to help me win. It might make me not lose this turn, but it's not going to help me win. And I think that's a different thing that, especially when you're newer to that style of game, is a harder thing to work through. And that's where I think, like, on the surface, some of the decks definitely seem unbalanced or more complicated. And I think they might be more complicated to learn and understand, similar to playing, as someone who plays aggro decks in Magic. Aggro decks, while there are decisions to make, tend to be a little more straightforward than a control deck does. You have more decisions you need to make all the time because you're having pressure put on you and you don't necessarily know how to react. So that just makes it a little more complicated to understand and learn. That's probably not the best deck for a beginner, but once you understand the nuance of the game better, but that quote unquote basic deck can still beat you.
Right.
And I think that's what this game does, is that there's more of a depth of knowledge and that you will be rewarded for playing these things multiple times. And that if you want to play the fast deck just to go try to do stuff, you can, but there are going to be things that are going to counter that. And you have to be playing with people who maybe understand that a little bit. So it's not a complicated game in the sense of, I don't think it's that hard to learn and that hard even to get decent at, but I think there might be a little more nuance in there and a little more challenge in there that maybe people are giving it at first blush. But I'm really impressed with Villainous. And I think the other big thing I recognized when playing it and opening the box and getting the stuff out, that the game is beautiful. Like, it looks good in pictures, but when you really are holding those cards and have them right there, this is a really stellar looking game.
The artwork on those cards on the front and the back is just incredible.
It really is. And all the different designs they have for the decks that show the custom backs that for each of them are really well done.
Yeah,
really,
and they're
really
not
well
just screen grabs either, because we just watched Aladdin the other night and I'm remembering my Iago card.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, it looks like a screen grab. But when you see the screen grab, it's like they took a screen grab, but then went ham on it and just made it super good looking. Like, the detail is incredible.
Yeah. So if you are listening to this and you have any interest in Villainous, I cannot urge you enough to get it. I think for the price, for how many, like I said, 2 to 6 players. So if you have a family, it seems like it's going to be a great fit there. I don't know. I think playing with 6 might be daunting. I think 6 might be too much. I think 3 to 4 is probably the sweet spot for this game. But I still think if you have a group of 6, and especially if you have a group of 6 who know what they're doing, I still think this game can clip along decently well. I'm really enjoying Villainous, though. I'm hoping to play it a bunch more and really get a chance to actually try out those decks against other people. But like I said, at first blush, the one game that I played, and then kind of checking out those decks in a way where I was playing them solo, to not use terms that Josh doesn't appreciate, which I think I might know what you're referring to, but I think we call it something different here. But anyway, I definitely recommend Villainous.
You can say fishbowling, it's okay.
I definitely recommend Villainous, though. I think it is great. It is an early, not that I necessarily do a great job. I think board games is always harder to be like, these are the best games of 2018. But this is definitely one of the most fun games I've had that has come out in 2018. This is one of the most fun I've had playing, that is for sure.
Awesome. I'm glad you really liked it because I love that game. So far.
No, awesome. Well, with that, Josh, what have you been playing on your television?
Oh boy, what have I been playing? Well, I played a little bit of Battle Chef Brigade today.
Ooh, I'm a big fan of Battle Chef Brigade. What do you think of Battle Chef Brigade?
It's a game. I'll say that. I don't have enough to give a solid opinion, but it's okay. I don't love it, but I'll give it more time. I do like that it's all voice acted. So
yeah, I like quirky things, and I think it's really quirky.
Oh, it's quirky. Yeah, it's definitely quirky, and I like the animation, so I want to keep playing. I was playing it. It was part of Prime Day deal, so I got it on my PC.
Oh, gotcha.
So I did jump into Ratchet and Clank because the fans and you spoke. I only got through Ratchet's first level because I only had about 25 minutes to play. Mm-hmm. I didn't anticipate all the story.
There's a lot of story,
and that I really feel at a disadvantage with the story because I didn't know what was going on, and now it's telling me a story I should know, but from a bad guy's standpoint instead of my character's standpoint. It's like there's a superhero who's in jail, and he's like,
yeah,
everyone knows about Ratchet and Clank. They have a video game that you're in or whatever. And he's like, let me tell my story. So I'm getting that I missed. Obviously, it's the fourth Ratchet and Clank. I get that. But
it is, but it isn't. It is a retelling of the first game.
Right. So I feel like I'm not saying it's going to keep me out of the game, but I feel like I'm definitely missing a lot to the story aspect of the game. I didn't hate the controls. I thought it was very good looking.
I think it's a really pretty game.
It's very nice looking, but like I said, I didn't get enough playtime to have an opinion on the game necessarily. But I didn't I expected to not like it flat out, and that wasn't the case. I did enjoy what I played.
I didn't not like it.
I didn't not like it, but I'll put some more time into it. I definitely want to play some more. We'll just see if I get to it because I did end up getting Dead Cells yesterday.
And
okay, so I was a little iffy on Dead Cells only because when anyone says Metroidvania to me, it's become a turnoff. It wasn't always that way. And I like Celeste, so don't get me wrong, but I was worried it was going to be people talking about the difficulty. So, I didn't finish Celeste because I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I did enjoy it when I started playing. And there's a handful of games I bought for the Switch or Xbox or PS4 because people were telling me it was great, and it just didn't hit for me. Dead Cells hits for me hard.
Yes,
it hits because, and I think why it hits so hard is because while you are repeating levels very similar to the other games, every time you play that level, you can approach it in a different way. The maps are different, which is nice, but also the weapons are different. So, and you constantly get decisions while you're playing to change weapons, and then you have to decide which ones you want to trade and what you think you're being more beneficial in, and what have you upgraded. Have you upgraded your purple weapons in your perks, or have you been doing red? This will make sense for people who played it, but essentially you play can we call it a ghost, a specter?
You're like a reincarnated prisoner,
right? So you come into the world as like a green goop, and you inhabit a dead body, which doesn't have it. It's an incredibly self-aware game, which I like. That it breaks the fourth wall a little bit. It definitely looks like a Castlevania game. It's side-scrolling. I haven't played Spelunky, but I've been told it's similar to that kind of. So you're going through levels, up and down chains, through what you would call an ant farm of a level. Everything is worked out. So there's paths, there's portals that you can teleport back and forth, and then there's a lot of villains, bad guys, if you will. You have a parry button, which I need to master, which I haven't. And you can turn on an indicator before an enemy attacks you. An exclamation mark will pop up above their head. And you will parry or roll, essentially, to avoid their attacks. That's really what's killing me the most, is not mastering that button. At least on the Switch, it's the A button. You have weapons. At least where I'm at, you have 2 weapons that you can equip on your hands. So melee weapons. You can have a sword, daggers, bow and arrows, or shields. And some of those shields actually have physical attacks with them as well. And you're collecting cells from these enemies you're killing. And as you collect cells from them, if you get to the end of the level and back to the main area, you will deposit those cells not into like what I'm trying to think of in my head. I'm thinking of Rayman, like Legends.
Oh, right.
You deposit it into some, like you're taking these cells and you're depositing them into either new equipment or abilities. And they make you deposit every single one of your cells. You can't hold any over.
But you can split them up between multiple things.
You can split them up, but like you can't even leave the room. The door won't open until you spend all of your earned cells. You also earn money, and you can buy things in the levels. You can buy equipment, or you can buy entrance into doors that typically have like perks or other things like abilities to unlock behind them. And you also do eventually get like stationary turrets or traps, or if you think of like Belmont and Castlevania throwing like freeze bombs or fire, holy water, you also get items like that as well. And then you have bosses that I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason to when they show up, but I definitely ran into a boss when I opened a cursed chest that makes you die in one hit immediately after you open it. So that sucked.
Yeah, unless you eliminate 10 enemies without getting hit, then once you eliminate 10 enemies, the curse is lifted.
And then I immediatly ran into a boss. The first enemy.
Okay, well, that's fine. That's fine.
But I didn't play Dark Souls, but it definitely has the Dark Souls feeling to it, where if you die, you lose everything because there's no save points. I didn't feel like I think I played for 3 hours straight because I didn't want to put it down, and it was like past midnight. I had to go to bed. But I really enjoyed what I played, and I didn't mind doing the same level. I eventually did unlock the Poison Swamp, which I think is the next level, kind of like metal mini level, whatever. It's in the level. Sewers, yeah, not swamps. Okay. Sewers. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm going to play it tonight after we record until I go to bed.
Awesome.
And I'll play some more. Those are my 3 games I have played.
So I'm going to continue the Dead Cells train because I also picked up Dead Cells, and I got it at the end of last week. And I picked it up, and maybe I even got it right away on Tuesday. Anyway, I got it about a week ago. And the first night I played, similar to you, it was about almost 1 a.m, and I had to go to work the next day. I was like, I really got to go to bed, but I really wanted to keep playing. I really enjoyed this game. I think that I've enjoyed roguelites in the past. I really enjoyed Rogue Legacy. Specifically, I had a lot of fun with that one. But I think this game just does a really good job of... Rogue Legacy, the combat was fine. In Dead Cells, I like the combat. I like getting in fights with things. I like figuring out how to best approach situations and looking at creatures and figuring out, okay, based on what I have, how am I going to approach this? I like the fact that all of the weapons have different feelings to them, and there's different ways you need to approach the enemies that you come upon. I like the fact that traps and stuff are really effective. They work really, really well, especially those that like shoot arrows and those that shoot like the little star things. Like they do a lot of damage, and they're a completely viable way to play the game of like throwing down a trap and stand up on the ledge above and let them just work on the enemies forever. Like there's a lot of good ways that it can happen. I think my longest run I've had so far has been about an hour.
That's insane.
I've gotten to the second boss. I don't know how many bosses there are because I'm trying really hard not to look at a wiki for this game, but I really want to. So I've gotten to the second boss. A couple things. I think it's important to dictate. There is a parry in the game and there is a roll. So both of those are so those are different things. You have to have a shield to parry though. So you can actually parry attacks. When you're playing, are you typically at the beginning, you have your sword, obviously. Are you typically taking the arrow, the like bow and arrow, or are you typically taking the shield?
I'm taking the bow and arrow because if I can keep distance, I do.
Right. And that's pretty much almost exclusively how I play. One of the things that happens when you get enough cells and you can invest them into abilities is you get the ability to start with a random melee weapon. Well, you have to unlock something to get to the random melee weapon, but you can start with a random bow and arrow. You can start with a random shield. And then eventually, if you unlock enough stuff, you can unlock the ability to start with a random melee weapon, of which come from the one other of those that you have unlocked that you spent cells on. And sometimes that's really great because you get really awesome things to start. Sometimes it's really not great because the options you're given to start then, because you then get 3 options. You get like basically like a shield, a bow and arrow, and a sword. But then you're like, I don't want any of these things. Because like for the sword sometimes, have you gotten the sandals at all?
No.
Where you just kick people?
No, I haven't gotten those.
So yeah, there's one of the weapons is sandals, and all you can do is kick people. So then you have like, I have like a bow and arrow, and I can kick people, but there's nothing in between. Or I can get or I can get a shield and kick people. That's really challenging. But the thing that's cool about that is it then forces you to learn how to play that, and then you learn that if I kick people and I kick them into walls, they take damage from hitting the walls, or if I kick them off a ledge, they take fall damage, and it really helps you to understand and unlock different ways in order to fight the enemies. There's one ability where you can warp behind the enemy that you're facing. So it goes into like one of your trap places, but you can just hit the button, you warp behind them, and then the next attack you do does like extra damage, which is really, really helpful when there's some enemies who have like a full shield in front of them that you can't do anything to, that typically you'd have to roll through and then turn around and hit them. Well, if I warp behind them and then hit them once with that ability, it pretty much takes them out. The first boss that I ever fought, I had a very like rote. I wanted to have traps to hold them in place, and then I would throw down something that shot arrows at them, and then I would shoot arrows at them from afar, and that's just what I did. And that's how I beat him the first 2 times that I beat him. And then I got to the point where I didn't have those traps anymore, and I was like, how am I going to do this? I don't have the stuff that I need. And I had that warp ability, and I beat him way easier than I did with the way that I was doing it before. So I like the fact that the game really forces you to explore different ways to approach it, because it's very easy to get very comfortable with what you're doing. But sometimes there's ways that are just better or different that you may not have explored. So I am loving Dead Cells. I'm going to continue to play the snot out of this game. I know someone in the Discord had asked about slowdown. I have experienced slowdown on occasion with the game in some further places because I'm also playing on Switch. There's a couple worlds where sometimes there's a lot of people on screen, and I've had it's chugged a little bit in those situations. Never to a point where I felt like I lost a fight or a battle because of it, but it definitely was like a little annoying. But overall, I think the game runs really well. I enjoy playing it on Switch, and I am adoring Dead Cells. It is wonderful. I think it's an easy recommend. Would you agree?
Oh, sorry. I beg you on there. I'll keep that on mic. Yeah, I think it. So far, I'm loving it, and it's a great price point, $25 for that game. So it's definitely a recommendation from me.
Absolutely. The only other game that I've been playing is more Overcooked 2. The wife and I have continued into World 2, so we're now working on World 2, getting those 3 stars on everything still. Definitely hitting a couple stages about halfway through World 2 that are a little more challenging. We've still gotten the 3 stars, but we're definitely hitting some things that are definitely putting us in a little tougher time than we had at all in the first world. They do some really cool things with this game, though, where like the one easy example that was in the trailers of like you'll start in a kitchen that is like you have to make salads in the hot air balloon, and then that hot air balloon crashes, and suddenly now you have to make sushi because it's crashed into a sushi kitchen. So it's really surprisingly difficult to reframe your mind about, okay, this is exactly how we were doing things. And now in the middle of the level, we have to like reevaluate everything that we were doing, find out where everything is, how all the things are going to happen, who's going to do what, who's responsible for everything, and try to, continue making things happen like that. So I'm still really enjoying it. I listened to an interview with the developers recently, and apparently in China, the nickname for the game is affectionately called Divorce Kitchen. So that hasn't happened yet, but it's early. We're only World 2. We'll see what happens, but still really enjoying Overcooked 2. I think it is definitely an easy recommend if you're looking for a couch co-op game. And apparently it is getting an update with New Game Plus and a 4 stars.
Hooray for you.
4 stars. Oh boy. So that'll be an interesting challenge down the line, but I am looking forward to it eventually. So that's all that we have been playing. Josh, I'm going to give you the option. Do you want to go to our very serious and important listener question, or do you want to go to our topics of the show first?
I think we need... oh, what a good question. Let's do topics of the show.
Okay, why don't you take us away with our first topic of the show then, sir?
All right. So there's some Kyle speaking here. So if I don't say it the way you wrote it,
I would like to point out you are more than welcome to rewrite any of these things that I put in here.
No, I appreciate that you write it, but I see something that you would say that I wouldn't say.
I do write like I talk.
Yes, you do. So last week we talked about Keyforge, which will be hard for Kyle to fishbowl. The card game where every deck is unique, or was unique at the time. So it looks like Fantasy Flight Games as another game in the genre they are dubbing unique games. As the company recently announced, Discover Lands Unknown. I'll be totally honest with you. I saw this announcement last week and I just completely did not pay attention to it.
Yeah, it was interesting because it got announced and I don't think anybody noticed really. And then so there was another big rollout yesterday or today of more information about it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. But now I'm interested. So the mechanics and the base components, like the meeples that will come in the game, and what your general goal is will be the same in each copy of the game. Including cards, tiles, tokens, and other aspects. Those will all be randomized. You'll still get those items in the games, but they'll be randomized from a large pool of available options. So last week, Keyforge seemed pretty, Kyle would say, dare to say unique. But now it looks like this is becoming a strategy for Fantasy Flight Games, which is similar to the living card game styles of gameplay. Do we think this will stick around? Would we be happy for a lot of games in this style? And what do you think the risks are, I would add, to this bold vision of future board games?
So,
what do you think?
Yeah, when I saw this and was reading more about it, so last week I was really high on Keyforge. I thought Keyforge sounded awesome. And this game, I am very much more tepid about my response. Because Keyforge, I could understand. They showed it, Richard Garfield was out doing these interviews. They were doing these long gameplay demos. You can go on YouTube and find gameplay demos from lots of different people who are at Gen Con covering how the game works. For Discover Lands Unknown, that isn't necessarily as much out there. And for some reason, I don't know why. My response to this is, I think it sounds really cool, but I'm more skeptical about how good this can or cannot be. I think there's a much larger possibility of variance between really good quality, really good sets of this game, and maybe some of the games that come out for this, that the combinations of things in there are just kind of a stinker. Right?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I agree with you. It's risky, and there's things that appeal to me and there's things that don't appeal to me. It's one player plus, so boom, appeal to me. One player game.
Yeah.
On the other hand, so I'm reading about the game, and it doesn't sound too much different from the "we didn't playtest this game" card game, because they're saying they're trying to invoke the thought that it is completely randomized, and it can't be completely randomized because the game needs to work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit of a mislead, I think, at least in the promotion strategy. Like, this isn't necessarily a game that is, from the description, I can tell you that it's not going to deliver what they're telling me. 100%. It will still deliver, but they have to go through all this vast pool of components to make sure that they work together. So, like, if you read about it, they're like, you might be in a desert island with Biff O'Bannon, who was great at survival in the winter. Well, you wouldn't want to pick that guy.
Right.
So why is he even in my game? I'll never use him. Like, if you're, because each game will be either mountains, Arctic, desert, or forest. So if you're getting random characters, what are the chances I might get a character or 2 or 3 that I can't even play in my game?
Do you think there's a possibility, though, that they have balanced this in a way similar to what they did with Keyforge, that if you get, for lack of a better word, the lord of a certain thing, that you're going to get those minions as well in Keyforge? Do you think they've done something like that with this game, where if you are in the desert, you are not going to get characters who are only good in the mountains?
You would think, right? They should word it better. If that's what it is, they should put something like a managed randomized card game, because it's not like,
right.
You can't have one without, like, it's one or the other. It's not both. So it's definitely a unique game, right? Mm-hmm. But they're trying to like single themselves out from like legacy games, specifically in the content they put out. But there isn't, in my mind, from what I'm reading, it doesn't sound too much different from what Marchicoro Legacy or Charterstone is. I don't understand why they need to try to separate themselves from those two games necessarily. They're not like going out saying this is not Charterstone, but they're going out saying this is not a legacy game.
Right.
But so when you play this game, you're always playing the same game. You just have pieces that my game would be different from yours.
Right.
But the game isn't going to be different every time we play it, per se. Like, the tiles might be in different spots. But the way that the game plays, it's almost like a little bit of a choose your own adventure aspect too. Like, they're like, look at this card, and then it's like, after a survivor investigates landmark number 4, advance to stage 2. Well, now you know the next time you play the game what that is.
Right.
Because it's not, while it is a unique game, your experience will be similar the next time, I think, the next time you play the game. At least that's how it comes across now.
Yeah, I do wonder if this is one of those situations. Yeah, I have a lot more questions than I have answers when it comes to this. And I wonder, like, one of the things that I wonder about, and this is a little bit different than what you're talking about, so I apologize if we get...
That's okay. I think I segued off of your thing anyway. So okay. Your question.
So I think about a game like this, and not that ratings mean everything, but how do you rate a game like this on Board Game Geek, knowing that no one's having the exact same experience, right?
Yeah, can you imagine like the varying ratings?
Right, like, because I got the game and played it, and I didn't really enjoy it, so I gave it a 3. But if I had gotten your version of the game and played it, maybe because of whatever or however the randomization in that pack worked, would have worked better for me, so I would have given it a 7.
Right.
Like, how, and so I think it's gonna be very hard to like look at ratings or reviews or thoughts on this game, because and maybe it's designed that it's more just all going to be in the middle. Maybe we're just thinking of the extremes too much, and the bell curve, 70% of people's experiences are going to be different but pretty similar type of a thing. Like, maybe we're just focusing a ton on the outliers of what's going to happen there.
Sure.
But that's just one of the things I go to with this game right away, of how do you even begin to rate the experience or review a game like this? And do you want to how many copies are people going to buy to see, like, is my experience going to be really different than everyone else's, or how unique was it from, how different is this game compared to the first version I got? You know, I wonder
Right.
how much that's going to happen and what the price points is going to be.
$60.
It's $60.
Yeah. I
Ooh.
went to their pre-order option.
I just was going to go pre-order it because I was like, oh man.
Yeah, so that was something I was going to bring up. At $60, that's, in my mind, that's too much of a bar. That's too much of a gamble on a game like this. Until I start seeing reviews, like I couldn't pre-order this, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
Hopefully I'll get to play it at PAX. It's coming out fourth quarter this year, so
Right.
like that's anywhere between November and February.
Well, I don't know if that they use quarter 4 2018.
They might not use fiscal.
I don't. Yeah, they might use actual calendar, so it could be, you know, October, November, December.
Yeah, that's true.
But it could be, you know, an Essen type deal. Yeah, I think that's one of the things I like also about Keyforge is the sense that it's $10. So if you get a deck that you're not really wild about, it was $10.
Right.
$60 is a pretty huge ask, which makes me think maybe it is more play tested and there are less extremes to it, that maybe the game experiences aren't all that different.
I hope so. I mean, I'm just kind of basically going off the press release they put out, so like who knows, but from reading it, it sounds unique for sure.
It does, absolutely.
For sure. We haven't seen a board game like this before to the extremes it's going, but we've definitely seen board games like this before.
Right.
So it's
So Fantasy Flight, obviously, you know, they're very much known for kind of creating their thing. You know, they had the living card games and then they really go into them. Do you think this is a game group, because like unique games, like that is like a thing they're calling them, it is a line of games now for them, unique games? Do you think this is going to be something where we're seeing multiple releases a year? Is there going to be a Discover Lands Unknown 2 or Discover More Unknown Lands? Like, do you think this is going to be something where we're going to see multiple releases a year that are unique games from them?
I don't know about the Discover series, if it's going to be like a series, but I love the fact that they're doing a unique game like line or focus, because one, it opens up doors for people who might not see mass publishing.
Mm-hmm.
A game like Gravity Warfare would have been like great for a unique game line.
But I think what you're missing is that unique games, that means literally that.
Oh, they're going by like the
yes, because their unique games are Keyforge and this. Okay. So the games are different. Like every game is different.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, so if every game is different, oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so like Keyforge, every deck is different. Discover, like every box is different.
We couldn't use Gravity Warfare because every game is essentially the same.
Right.
I mean, I still think, yeah, it's interesting, and it seems like a daunting task to put out multiple unique games in a year. So I don't know if, I mean, obviously they're going to see how these games do, but I'm confident in Keyforge. I'm not so confident in Discover Lands Unknown at the moment.
Who do you think you're going to see, or do you think we are going to see other companies following suit and doing something like this soon?
Yeah, I mean, we'll for sure see people do it if it's successful. The problem is, like right now, you're a game company, and is your decision just to go try doing it now, or is it to wait? Because if you wait, how far behind? Like if you're, I don't want to use Asmodee as an example, because if you're Yellow and you're like, I'm gonna wait and see if this unique thing pans out, and then Asmodee is like, we're just gonna go because we can afford to take a risk.
Mm-hmm.
If they get the ball rolling, will it be too late for Yellow if it's successful, or will it's just like, I don't know, it's too early to tell, I think. But everyone wants a bigger audience. Like Yellow put out that 8-bit box that's coming out.
Right.
It's certainly a unique game. It's just not unique in the way that Fantasy Flight's using that terminology. So people are getting creative. So yeah, I just think like, how long did they work on Keyforge? And like, how long have they been working on Discover Lands Unknown? Is this something that they were like, oh, now that we can do Keyforge, we now can just get the ball rolling on several games that use this technology to make board games? Or was this something else that has also been in the works for 4 years? Like, without more information, I don't know. I feel like they trademarked it, unique game. Like,
Right.
That's a big thing.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think the thing that gives me hope about this, though, is the designer is a guy who I think is really, when we talk about big name game designers, you talk about your Eric Langs, your Rob Davios, like, the people who get a lot of fanfare. The guy who designed this, Corey Connexa, like, I don't think he gets anywhere near the fanfare he should for the games he has designed, either on his own or has been part of the team that designed. Because if you think about, he's done Star Wars Rebellion, Twilight Imperium, Star Wars Imperial Assault, Eldritch Horror, Battlestar Galactica, Descent 2nd Edition, Mansions of Madness. Like, this guy makes good games.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that's really hard sometimes, is because he's part of that Fantasy Flight machine and they're constantly coming out with loads of games. And, obviously he is not necessarily doing all these things 100% alone, but like a lot of the things he does turn out pretty swell, So maybe he's smarter than I am, I'm sure. Maybe there's something in the secret sauce here that he knows about that we don't.
Hey, yeah, he's a great designer, and all those games are huge hits. So, you got to give him benefit of the doubt, but that's a high price point.
It is a high price point. It definitely is, especially with how much they're trying to sell, how unique it is. That is a lot to ask from someone.
Yeah.
So,
but other than that, I'm excited to find out more about the game just in general. So, and it's it's gonna be playable soon. Like, we can have this game soon, but
yep.
But yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Awesome.
We'll see.
All right. So, hey, second story this week. The saga about Sony and crossplay continues. As Bethesda is now saying, it may not release its digital card game Elder Scrolls Legends, which we have talked about on the show before, and we think it's a pretty good game. But they're saying they may not release it on a platform that does not allow cross-play and cross-progression. Now, in an interview with Game Informer, Pete Hines from Bethesda did not single out Sony. He said, hey, we're working with all of our content partners. This is just what our stance is on it, that this is a non-negotiable for us. It has to have crossplay and it has to have cross-progression. Eurogamer followed up in an interview specifically saying things about Sony, and actually even Andrew Reiner, who did the interview for Game Informer, asked him specifically about Sony, but Pete Hines never said Sony. But when Eurogamer asked him and basically put Sony into his mouth, he said, yes, we're talking to Sony, but we're also talking to Xbox and Nintendo too. We want to make sure all of our key partners are on the same page about this, basically. But Bethesda's come out and said this is a non-negotiable, that those things have to be in the game for them to release the game on the platform. Is this the game, then, Josh, that breaks Sony's proverbial back? Is this the game that Sony says, we throw in the towel, we want your game on our platform, we will allow crossplay? Or does Sony say, your game's a stupid digital card game, we don't care, don't release it on our platform, no one's going to care because it's not Hearthstone? What do you think?
Well, it would be funny if this is the game that breaks Sony because of the type of game it is. I do think they might not admit it, but that cross progression dig is certainly a Sony Fortnite dig, at least in my mind. The crossplay thing I get, but the cross progression was the big issue between that.
Definitely.
Do I think Sony would ever say, no, we don't want your game? No, because same reason why Pete Hines would say we're we're specifically targeting Sony. Like they want to have a business relationship.
I don't mean literally come out and say your game is stupid. We don't care. I don't mean literally.
It would be. I don't think that Sony has a choice. If a company like Bethesda, I mean, obviously they have a choice, but there's too many eyes on it. So it's Bethesda. It's not the people who make Hands of Fate. It's not like a indie developer studio. Mm-hmm. Even though it's just a card game, everyone knows that this game wants to come out on every console. Mm-hmm. It is public. So if we get it on every console and we don't get it on PlayStation, I don't think it's not like, I don't know what, I still can't get my head in Sony's mindset 100%. I know a little bit where they're coming from as far as like monetary, like console selling, but it's not what the argument is about, the conversation is about. I just don't understand. Sony not carrying this game isn't going to sell them less consoles. So I guess they technically don't have a lot to lose over this game.
Well,
but if Bethesda decides to take that as a sign that Sony doesn't want to work with them, then the ball's in Bethesda's court to decide what they want to do with future releases.
Well, and I think it's very clear that Bethesda and Microsoft obviously have a cozy relationship, right? I don't think that's a secret to anyone.
Right.
And I had said back in the day, I think maybe on the PSVG flagship show, that if these companies cared much about crossplay as they claimed to, then, and my example at the time was Bethesda with Fallout 76, they would say, fine, we're not releasing our game on your console.
Right.
You know, because, yeah, for us, the financial hit would be worth it because we believe so strongly in this is the best thing for this product and the players. Now, obviously that's a big ask because that's millions of copies of a game, so that maybe that's unrealistic of me for me to expect, but I think for a game like Elder Scrolls Legends is the perfect place to do that. And I think Sony is losing out if they don't have this game on their console, because you're right. I don't know if anyone will go buy a PS4 for Elder Scrolls Legends. However, if Elder Scrolls Legends isn't on PS4, nobody's purchasing a microtransaction from that game on their PlayStation.
Right.
So they're still losing money. And I think that's always been the rub for Sony is if you buy... We'll use Overwatch, which obviously, and I think the third-party games get a little weird compared to free-to-play games versus $60 games and everything else.
Yeah.
But if you will say Overwatch, let's say it had cross-play and cross-progression, if you buy a new skin for Diva, or you buy loot boxes over on Xbox and you get these sweet skins, and then you play with those skins on PlayStation got no cut of those sweet skins that you bought, you know?
Right.
So I get where they're coming from, right? They want to make money. And I think the thing that's hard is, from MPD numbers, PlayStation is the number one selling console the first 6 months of the year. It has sold more than anything. It is over 80 million units sold at this point. Like, everyone is complaining about crossplay, but it hasn't hit them in the wallet yet. Sony's still making a ton of money, and people are still buying PlayStations. Right. So, it's really, we talk about how, well, it leaves a sour taste in the mouth. It's not as good for gamers. It makes them look bad. But we say that, but none of that is actually turning into bad things. Like, they increased their sales projections.
Right.
So,
but if you look at if we looked at Fortnite game sales on consoles, though, my thing with like the Sony thing is I get that aspect, but it sounds to me like Sony thinks that every consumer has every console, because they don't. And if I only have a PlayStation, I'm only spending my money on Fortnite on my PlayStation. Why can't I play with my friend who's on an Xbox? I'm not contributing to his digital currency. So Sony's still getting, as a consumer, so they have 81 million PS4s in homes right now, something crazy like that.
Whatever it is, yeah.
So if they allow crossplay with Fortnite, just as the example, how much is there? Like, they're not losing money because people are all of a sudden going to buy an Xbox to play their PS4 Fortnite on. They're essentially, if everyone who has Fortnite on the PS4 spent $5 on the Fortnite store because now they can play with Josh and on his Xbox, they're going to be billionaires. Like,
well, right. But I think that Sony's approaching it from the perspective, and my guess, what do we know? We're not business experts,
right,
but I think they see it as, well, if you want to play with your friend Josh, you're going to buy a PlayStation to play with your friend Josh.
We'll get him buy a PlayStation, right?
Right, which, isn't realistic for most people. And you're right. I think the thing that happens is that, I have all three consoles. My preference is to play on PlayStation, but I'm still playing a lot on PlayStation, and I don't play Fortnite, but if I did play Fortnite, I probably wouldn't be playing Fortnite on my PlayStation.
Right.
And I think that's the thing where they're losing out is that, yes, they have some people who have no other options. They're only playing on PlayStation, so they can't play with their friends. But for those of us who do have options, we're choosing not to play on PlayStation.
Right.
And I think that's where they're really hurting themselves. And I do wonder, I'm really interested to see how this happens. Supposedly, PlayStation has said they're aware and that they're listening, that they are working on a solution that they think is going to be, good for them and their fans. I think the one disadvantage that PlayStation has in comparison to a company like Microsoft is that in a lot of ways, the PlayStation brand has really been the driving moneymaker for Sony as a company for the last few years. Microsoft has more, Microsoft they have more money than they know what to do with in comparison to Sony as a company.
Right.
So they can make riskier moves with their Xbox brand because they have plenty of other places to make that money up.
Yeah.
Sony is a very diverse company, but they're not making money the same way Microsoft is. So
yeah, no, I agree with you. And one thing that does bug me, so the people bring up in defense of the Sony crossplay, they're like, Microsoft with the 360, they wouldn't allow crossplay.
Right.
I understand that, but we're in a world where no one can learn from their mistakes. Is that where we all live now? Because Phil Spencer is playing God of War on Mixer, telling people to go buy God of War. I think we're at a point where we can just say, yeah, Microsoft made a mistake in the past, but they're trying to fix it now.
I think the difference is that people aren't saying that.
No, they're not saying that.
That's what I think the big difference is people are saying, when you bring up the fact that, in the past, Microsoft wanted to do it, let's not... Microsoft didn't make a mistake in the past. Microsoft was in the lead, and they made a business decision to maintain their lead.
Sure, okay, but it was a mistake now. If you look at it now, it was a mistake.
Well, I wouldn't even say looking at it now it's a mistake. I would still say back then that was the best decision to make. The world has changed since then.
Sure, that's
true. As consumers, we expect different things from our companies. How we interact, in a digital marketplace, has changed. All of that is different than it was then.
Yeah,
and I think that's the bigger thing. I think both of those things can be true. It could have been okay for Microsoft to say that then, and it could be not right for Sony to say it now.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll see with Call of Duty.
Yeah, and that's one of those things I just don't even know. I was gonna put stuff in there about the rumors about Call of Duty wanting crossplay and that Sony said no, but every site that I've seen reporting that, unless you've seen others, has not been the most reputable sites.
Right.
Not that they are disreputable or that they're being dishonest or lying, but I have yet to see someone I truly trust run with that story.
Sure. I just mean if crossplay is so important to the people who are making a lot of noise about it,
right?
There would be a sizable difference in sales. I don't think we'll see a sizable difference in sales because everyone buys Call of Duty. But this one is only multiplayer. Well, not everyone, a large portion of people. But if crossplay was really a big deal to everybody, they wouldn't be buying it on PlayStation. If they're in the group of people who have an Xbox and a PlayStation.
Yeah, I'm actually really interested to see just how Call of Duty does this year because of where Call of Duty sales have been, the fact that it's only multiplayer, and I'm wondering if Fortnite is still going to be the multiplayer game of choice.
I think so. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon.
So I'm very interested. I was watching I didn't get to play in the beta at all, and I haven't pre-ordered the game, though I'm interested to play this Call of Duty. And I was watching a streamer who is an Overwatch player typically, but they were streaming the Call of Duty beta, and I'm not going to say who it was because I felt kind of bad. And he was playing, and then he said to his group, and he was playing with a full team, he's like, man, I haven't been this bored playing a game in a long time. And I was just like, oh gosh. And he was doing great. Like, he was doing really, really well. But all he could talk about was how bored he was. And I was like, oh, man. It looked fun.
Rinse and repeat, right?
Yeah.
Run, kill.
Yeah, it looked fun though. I mean, I thought it looked like a great. I am interested though too, since they increased the amount of like health points everyone has. I'm really interested to see. Yeah, because it used to be, for lack of a better word, like you had 100 health, and now you have 150.
Okay.
So that's actually a pretty significant increase in health.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to see if that makes any difference. But hey, I'm really interested to know what you all think who are listening. Do you think that, you know, this Elder Scrolls Legends, is this going to push Sony in one direction? Is this not a big enough game? Do you think this game is going to end up releasing without crossplay on PlayStation? I'd be very interested to hear what people have to say. Speaking of which, what people have to say, Josh, we have a really interesting listener question.
We do. We always like a non-topic question. This is definitely off our normal topics. So at Jimmy Scallions, who unfortunately is my cousin as well. I think he'll like that.
Unfortunately?
He'll like that I said that.
Okay.
if he's even listening. Jimmy Scallion says, is a hot dog a sandwich? Now, I would like to say, before you answer, I did bring this up at work, and all hell broke loose for a good hour. So what is your opinion?
Okay. I have my opinion, but I want to know first about how all of the hell that broke loose at work. Like, what happened? Did you were people divided that vehemently about this?
Yeah, there's 10 people that were probably 70-30 split.
Okay.
And then this conversation leads to 30 other conversations. So that's where the hell broke loose.
Okay. So let me ask you a question, because I want to. Is a hamburger a sandwich?
Right. See, you say that, but the question isn't, is a hamburger
I know, but I'm just curious. Is a hamburger a sandwich?
No, a hamburger isn't a sandwich.
So then you clearly also don't think a hot dog is a sandwich.
No, a hot dog isn't a sandwich. A hot dog by itself is just a hot dog. This is, would you call it? Okay. You're at Coney Island in New York. We have a Coney Island here too, so I don't want to confuse things. You're in New York. You walk into Nathan's famous hot dogs, right? And you say, can I get a hot dog sandwich? Because you'd have to call it a hot dog sandwich, because a hot dog is just a hot dog.
Okay, so if a hot dog is just a hot dog,
yeah,
what is it when it is in a bun?
It's on a bun, not a sandwich.
So when you walk in to a restaurant or any place that sells hot dogs, you say, when you walk into Nathan's, you say, I want a hot dog on a bun.
Maybe. I wouldn't. I know that doesn't help my argument, I guess.
No, that doesn't help your argument at all.
The reason why that came up is because someone argued anything between two pieces of bread is a sandwich.
Okay. Do you disagree with that argument?
Of course. Anything in between two pieces of bread? Because what about an open-faced sandwich?
But that's not between two pieces of bread then.
Right, but it's a sandwich.
But you just...
Well, that was my counterpoint to their sandwich argument.
It's an open-face...
sandwich.
I mean...
Does that mean pizza is an open-faced sandwich because there's bread on the bottom?
Well, I think I would argue that potentially open-faced sandwiches have been mislabeled, and that's just not what they are.
But they're but it says on the menu, open-faced sandwich.
Wait, what menu says open-faced sandwich?
Like any deli.
We don't have delis where I live. Sorry.
Of course you have delis.
No, we don't. We have no delis.
Delis. What? Okay, well, I guess I have to
come to Iowa and find me a deli in my town. I want you to come where I live and find a deli.
What town do you live in?
I live in Waverly, Iowa.
Waverly.
Good luck, everyone listening, if you want to come find me, I guess.
Waverly, Iowa. Deli. And boom. Sub-city.
Yeah, it is a sub shop. They sell submarine sandwiches like you'd buy at Subway or Jimmy John's or Roberts and Gerbert's. Now they're exceptional. They're very, very good. But when I think like New York deli, that is not a deli.
So why do they call it a submarine sandwich?
I don't know. I'm not a food expert.
Because isn't it a submarine? Just cover what it is.
I don't know.
People liberally use sandwich. That's what my point is. You can just have a hot dog be a hot dog.
But what is it when it's in a bun then?
You really don't have delis in Iowa.
I told you. I'm not
That's
lying.
so bizarre.
I'm not lying. They're probably in maybe like in Iowa City or Des Moines. They might have like an actual like legit deli. Just where I am at, there is no legit deli here.
Wow.
But anyway.
Oh, Boardwalk Deli.
So clearly you don't think a hot... Well, actually, I work in Waterloo, so it's not that far away.
Boardwalk Deli. Boom. There's delis in Iowa.
I've actually never been there. And if it's anything like Sub City, then it's really not a deli.
Go
but
open an open-faced sandwich.
But so you clearly are not on the hot dog as a sandwich side.
I understand what the argument people try to make, but a sandwich, this is going to sound so stupid. A sandwich is a sandwich.
And a hot dog clearly does not fit into that, nor does apparently a hamburger.
No, they're different types of food. I think a sandwich qualifies as a, like. You
have to use bread?
I think you have to use bread, right?
What if it is...
A calzone's not a sandwich.
Okay. What if it is a bagel?
Well, if you put things in between...
Right, like if you cut a bagel in half and use that as your buns, if you would.
You could do it, but that's not the intention of a bagel, right?
Right, but there, like we have a place here that does that. I mean, I don't want to pigeonhole a bagel into being only one thing. Like I want it to feel free to express itself in any food way it wants to.
I getcha. Non-food specific. I think so. We shouldn't try to answer what a sandwich is.
Instead, we should just answer if a hot dog is a sandwich.
Just answer the question: is a hot dog a sandwich? I get like mad that people consider it a sandwich. I want to be rational. I want to be like, well, everyone can have it their own way. But I don't think I should just go to my Coney Island that's here in Worcester and ask them, is a hot dog a sandwich? Because they are the experts.
So when in doubt, I always turn to experts and to people who know more than me. So according to the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council,
okay,
their verdict is, and I quote, "Our verdict is a hot dog is an exclamation of joy, a food, a verb describing one, showing off, and even an emoji. It is truly a category unto its own." So there you have it.
It's not a sandwich.
A hot dog is not a sandwich. So, and like I said, if I'm in doubt, I'm going to go to the experts. And the experts tell me a hot dog is not a sandwich.
But you said you had an opinion. What was your opinion?
That is my opinion.
Okay.
I also don't believe a hot dog is a sandwich.
Okay.
So if you want to...
I see. You see how I circumvented my answer because I felt like I had to legitimize my answer.
Well, and I was very worried, like, with how passionate you were about that, I was really glad I don't think it is one, because that could have been a really interesting conversation. So that was just like the whether pineapple belongs on pizza conversation in the Discord.
Yeah, well, let's not get into that because I feel like we're on different sides of the fence.
I think we are on different sides of the fence on that one. You're on the very wrong side. I'm on the glorious correct side. Anyway, Josh, we've been going for quite some time. What do you say we wrap this show up?
Yeah, thanks for joining us on our new food podcast. Remember, find us on social media. That is at BoredWithVG. Use that hashtag BoredWithVG. We actually got one while we were recording. Facebook.com/BoredWithVG. Paul Calicote, your game is in the mail and on the way. So be excited, because I was excited to send it to you. Splig used at BoredWithVG right now, playing Fuse and Rhino Hero with his nephew. So good job, Splig. We love that you guys are sharing that. And Kyle still is anxiously awaiting. He messages me every day. When will we get our Twilight? When do we get our fan fiction? boardwithvg@gmail.com. Please send him something. I don't want to read it, but you can send it to Kyle. I'm sure he'll love it. You can find me on some things. Xbox, PlayStation, at Why So Serious. That's SIRRIUS. You can find me on our Instagram. You don't need to go to my Instagram. It's boring pictures of my kid. And that Switch code, it's out there. Find it. Kyle, what are your plugs?
You can find me in all the usual places at Psychocross, CYCOCROSS, and those usual places are Twitter, Instagram, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, and Board Game Geek. I also have a Switch friend code. I don't know what it is. Maybe if you ask me for it, I'll give it to you. Or you can come to Waverly, Iowa and find it, I guess. So
I'll meet you at the deli.
Yeah, exactly. We could go to Sub City. Sub City is very good. It's very good. But as always, if you have suggestions for future topics, be sure to reach us out to us on the social media, because we want to talk about what you want to hear about. Even if it's food related or movie related, we'll give you a little time for that as well. And as always, everyone, remember, whether it be board games or video games, never stop gaming.